For the very latest on this story, I'm joined by our chief foreign editor, Rob Parsons. Rob, here we are 24 hours after this accident. What more do we know?
Well, there's still a lot of confusion. A few things are becoming a little bit clearer. We know for certain that the plane was shot down and that an exchange of prisoners should have taken place at the Ukrainian-Russian border on Wednesday. It didn't happen. We've heard Sergei Lavrov talking about what happened. He's called for a meeting of the United Nations Security Council. It's going to happen behind closed doors. He's calling it monstrous. Initially, Ukraine did seem to suggest that it was responsible for shooting the plane down when the story first broke, saying that there had been a cargo on board of S-300 missiles, and subsequently they started to row back, which does suggest that there was a certain amount of knowledge at that stage on the part of the Ukrainians. An investigation has been held by the Ukrainians. They're saying that they have no idea who was on board that plane. And that seems to be the critical issue here. They say that normally when an exchange takes place between the Russians and the Ukrainians, and quite a few of them have happened now, the Russians, if they're flying in the POWs to Belgorod near the border, will inform the Ukrainians in advance of the vehicle being used, if it's an aircraft, the flight path, how many people are on board, who is on board, and so on and so forth, to avoid any sort of incident of the kind that we're talking about now. No information of that kind, according to the Ukrainians, was provided by the Russian side. Now, almost implicitly, that suggests that the Ukrainians are saying, yes, we were responsible for this, but we just didn't know that there were any POWs on board. We shot the plane down, believing it to contain S-300 missiles. Now, there is no reason why the Ukrainian side would have shot down a Russian plane if they had known that there were Ukrainian prisoners of war on board. The Ukrainians, for their part, are now calling for an international investigation.
So this comes as the U.S. seems to be one step closer to confiscating Russian assets. What more do we know about that, and does that relate?
Yeah, I mean, one step closer. A number of efforts are afoot to try and provide funding for Ukraine's war effort, for its reconstruction, for funding its administration, social services, and so on and so forth. Money that has been drying up recently. That 61 billion that Congress was meant to approve for financing Ukraine's war effort, the 50 billion that the Europeans were meant to have approved, looks like it could well be approved now at this EU summit on February the 1st. And this is a separate thing. It refers to the 300 billion Russian assets that are held not just in the United States, but in the European Union, Japan, Canada as well, which froze Russian assets after the start of the war. There's about 5 to 6 billion held in the United States, and Congress is gradually going through its gears to get that confiscation in place. So the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and the House Foreign Affairs Committee both approved by substantial margins a bill to authorize the confiscation of Russian assets held in the United States. That would be a first in the United States with a country with whom it is not at war. It would then have to go through the Senate and through the House and then have to be approved by President Biden himself. But it's getting closer. It doesn't mean that the European Union will follow suit or that Canada or Japan will, but it would be a major step for the United States to do that.
All right, Rob, thanks so much for that. That's our chief foreign editor, Rob Parsons.